I'd like to turn it over to our panelists now with this initial question. What does the job market look like right now from your vantage point? In other words, what do you see as the hiring outlook for 2023? So let's begin with Donna.
I have to say that it looks very solid right now in the current students that I'm working with and the alumni that I work with. And it seems to be across all industries except for big tech. And when I mean big tech, we're talking marquee companies such as Google or Microsoft or some of those organizations that may have slightly overhired during COVID and they're right sizing right now. But even those people impacted there are finding opportunities in other corporate entities because of their expertise from those companies. But if you're looking in finance, if you're looking in manufacturing, if you are across the board technology, outside of some of these bigger named companies, there is solid hiring going on and very nice compensation packages. So people are getting paid their value. And so as of now, I would say it's looking very strong.
Terrific. All right. So over to you, Mike.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. So from our client base, 2022 was all hands on deck. It was, full gas in terms of hiring and growth. In 2023, nobody's hitting the brakes, but they may be taking off the accelerator a little bit. So we're still seeing a lot of growth. There was an interesting article in actually the Wall Street Journal today talking about how there's still so much strong growth in small businesses, and we're seeing that. So since 2020, I think the statistic was small businesses had added 3.7 million net jobs, whereas the marquee companies that Donna was talking about actually shed 800,000 during that time. So it's the small businesses, small companies, less than 250 employers, where there's still a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, terrific. And we know that often those are the organizations that pull us out of recessions, right? So that's just really promising to see. Yeah, terrific. Okay, David, how about from your perspective?
And they've loaded the responses for me greatly, but, looking at articles and things that you see out there, the outlook for 23 is being captured with a new term, right? I had it termed as something else, but they have a better term. The great rebalancing is what they're calling it now, right? Which is really just a returning to what was normal, right? You're still seeing, as Donna and Michael both indicated, you're seeing, joblessness claims at the lowest rate that they've been in 9 months. You still see right now 186,000 individuals hit the market, and that's down about 6K individuals that are actually applying for unemployment, over last quarter. And so the market is moving in a way that we would anticipate it to move in a post-pandemic time, but there's still a lot of things that we have to consider. Even though job growth is continuing strong in the first quarter, it is indicated that it will taper off, as Donna has indicated. How strong and how likely it will be in a specific industry that you're in, that still remains to be seen. So some of the things that we talk about hopefully will be sensitive to the fact that every market doesn't look like every other market, right? And you'll have some very specific pitfalls and some very specific advantages that you'll be able to take as you respond to the marketplace. Yeah.
And I think to build on what David just said, with the rebalance, some companies are finally in their budget have roles to fill. So roles that may have gone away during the pandemic and left a gap, and where people were struggling or people were overwhelmed, they're now getting to a stable financial state where they have the ability to fill in those gaps with talent.
And from an employer standpoint, to be able to fill with talented talent. So, during the boom and the rush, the big companies could swoop in and, steal some of your best people, essentially. And I think now that's starting to reverse some. And so these smaller companies are having the opportunity to say, hey, we can really upskill and again, as Donna said, at market rates.
Yeah, terrific. So really interesting to hear this, things from different perspectives. And from my perspective, because I'm talking to a lot of newer Ross alumni, especially new MBAs, a bunch of whom went into tech during the pandemic, right? When tech staffed way up. And I understand now, even as tech is laying off, they're only laying off a fraction of who they hired during the great pandemic. During the pandemic. So even though it feels like like these are tough times for a lot of folks. Really, we're still above where we were in tech before the pandemic. So, with that in mind, then with at least some storm clouds on the horizon, right? And at least a mild recession forecast, what all do you see more specifically in terms of what jobs will be in demand, what jobs will be harder to find, and maybe even drilling into industry, right? Like you talked about, Mike, the fact that there's different markets. So yeah, let's go to that question next.
Right. And can I take a stab at it if you don't mind, Lisa?
Yeah, please, David. Sorry.
When you look at data and you're trying to find, what's out there for folks, where are people finding these pockets of great opportunities? Because, and I'll talk about a couple of things as we consider the rebalance or the return to normal. A lot of jobs are a lot of organizations are beginning to do that quiet hiring, looking at their internal staff and thinking about the development opportunities to move people internally. And hopefully we'll start talking a little bit about what networking look like and how that plays a part in what we're doing. But, the demand is still out there in certain industries. And I'm going to talk about what I saw out there in LinkedIn and some other sources as I saw. And some of them may be applicable, some of them may not be. So let's talk about right now in the immediate sense, when they do their top 10, what they're seeing job seekers finding available to them that us as employers are posting out there. A quick top 10 is really quite odd, but front desk receptionists, psychologists, drivers, bankers, bakers, veterinary assistants, information specialists, home health aides, warehouse transportation specialists, and training developers. These are in the top 10 where they saw the number of postings go 2 times as many from the last quarter. This is what folks are posting that they have this high need for. Back during the pandemic, individuals, we had the Great Resignation. Individuals were quitting their jobs and there were 2 jobs available for every single candidate. That's beginning to taper off. And you're starting to see where it's maybe a job that you like, and it's available for a pool of candidates that have made application to this specific job. Looking back over the span of a year, you see some regularity as it relates to some of the positions that are historically carrying a high interest level or a high demand level, and that's still registered nurses, right? Sales, software engineers are still there. Drivers, retail sales, project managers, developing op engineers, warehouse associates again, cashiers, customer service reps. Those are still high demand positions. And I know some of my other panelists will start talking about some of those specific industries where you may see that high growth. Tech has not gone away. Tech is just beginning to rebalance in the normal big box tech companies, but tech is still thriving individual organizations. My organization, as an example, shameless plug, we're looking for several IT positions, and you can go to Motor City Casino Hotel Employment and find those. But we still need the people, because as they went to these great opportunities that are available during the Great Resignation, now as we return to a normal pace, we still need you. We still have these same needs, and even more so because our business and our demand is starting to grow and change in different ways. And so that's what I found out there initially. And obviously, please chime in, panelists, and help me kind of fill in that space a bit more.
Terrific. So, Mike, how about you?
Yeah, so I think as we go into this, recession, downturn, whatever it turns out to be, I think it's going to be a little bit different than what we've seen historically, at least from a job standpoint. Demographics, baby boomers are, still retiring at a greater pace. I think we saw during the pandemic, a lot of boomers retire even earlier than that. And I think if we go into a recession, there's going to be even more so saying, I've been through this, now twice in the last 3 years. I'm tired. I want out, basically. So if you're, middle manager, senior manager, those opportunities are going to continue because they need to replace that knowledge. They need to replace those people. So you're still going to have those opportunities, I think, even with a downturn. So, and that cuts across industries. And we're still seeing sales. There's companies and again, small, mid-market companies are looking to kind of bolster their growth and their prospects by bringing on new salespeople. And also I've got a client that's succession planning. They're looking at their sales staff and they're saying, yeah, our senior people may be retiring in the next, 3 to 5 years. We need to bring in some junior talent now so that when that happens, they're ready.
Yeah, terrific. Yeah,
I
Donna.
also think there's some industries that are retooling, and I'm going to use the auto industry. They're having to retool their talent because their objectives, they're now seeing themselves as technology companies. And so years before, when they were looking for more traditional employees, now they've opened their doors to a broader range of talent. So I think if candidates can look at who are the companies, particularly in the tech environment, who are the companies that need to upskill because their technology departments were too narrow or they didn't meet their needs. Now, they used to meet their needs, but now they need a broader scope of talent that they're looking at. I also think that the folks who are in the global area, that have the jobs are in demand for people who have cross-cultural types of experience. So they've either managed people in multiple countries, or they've actually traveled to multiple countries that have new opportunities. So I think it helps when you can do jobs where people require cross-cultural knowledge or ability.
Yeah, super helpful. And as I listen to all of you talk, starting with David, you were listing off all those jobs that are in demand right now, which I think was speaking to what Donna was saying earlier about how, yeah, we're seeing things open up that weren't as open before. But then even if you look at the industries associated with those jobs, like, psychologist, home health aide, registered nurse, just as an example, I mean, that's healthcare, right? We know healthcare because of COVID took a hit, but now it's starting to come back. Right. So for folks who maybe were in tech, what are those tech jobs that are in healthcare, or those tech jobs that are in auto, for instance? And so there was an article that, the other day that, General Motors was saying, yeah, we're totally going to take advantage of the tech layoffs to hire some more, to hire some tech talent that maybe didn't look at us before. So those are some of the trends that I'm seeing as well. So terrific. All right. So I guess moving on then, what career advice, and Donna, maybe we start with you on this one, but what career advice would you have for folks seeking in 2023? And especially Donna, as I think about some of the folks I'm working with who are relatively new, let's say MBA grads, who, have got, had the rug pulled out from under them, and now are looking at, having been laid off and are re-entering the job market as, as tech program managers, for instance.
Well, one of the things that I think you have to realize is from the beginning of time, it is network, network, network. It is expanding your network and getting comfortable being able to have conversations and being out there building relationships with networks so that you can turn them into advocates. There's a great book called The 2-Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton, who helps people. The idea is to narrow it down to target companies, identify contacts, start to develop rapport with them so that you can turn people into advocates. I think that Ross offers a wide array of networking opportunities. The University of Michigan as a whole has always boasted the ability to reach out to someone else with the block M. But within the family of Ross, I found that it's even more helpful, that people respond more favorably. So to find those people, it's a matter of, if you have 7, maybe you have 10 companies that you're interested in, go to LinkedIn, look at the University of Michigan Stephen M. School of Ross website and look at the alumni who are there and start to reach out to them and start to ask about their story, ask about their journey while you're sharing what you're looking for. I think it's important to engage people you were in school with. Go back to the folks that you were in class with. It hasn't been that long. Go back to some of the folks you met during your first job search. Maybe you declined something. Maybe you talked to a company and it wasn't a great fit, but boy, you had a really nice conversation with someone there. And maybe that's the industry that's in need right now. I think the more challenging piece is when you're going to focus on an industry that is highly desirable and hard to get into, such as consulting. Even networking isn't going to help with things like that.
Yeah, it's
not to end on a down note.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, during the pandemic, for instance, a lot of people from consulting went into tech, right? So they went from tech, and I had often wondered, are we going to flow back from tech to consulting? But it sounds like you're saying you think consulting is challenged right now too. Is that correct?
Well, in my opinion, when you have the threat of a recession or a downturn, companies start to look at what are their additional expenses, not their core expenses, but what type of services can we cut from our vendors. Now, if we're producing products, we can't cut our materials. But what we can do is we can look at who are outside sources advising us. And at this moment in time in the market with our company, does it make sense to be hiring outside people? So I think one of the industries that could get hit with some declines or reductions in force is potentially the consulting field.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. And I wonder, I guess related to that, often, the firms that start to pull us out of recession too are those temp firms, right? So maybe not the big consulting firms, but the
Contract houses.
Yeah, the
and
contract
solutions.
houses.
Yes.
So which becomes an option for people on a temporary basis.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. So how about David? Anything that you would want to add to the conversation here on career advice?
Oh, certainly. I mean, Donna hit my favorite one, which is networking. I mean, it goes far and beyond most of the other advice I can give you. I always look at, my 4 C's that I consider, right? The capabilities, having the capability to do the job that you're looking to do. Obviously, you need to make sure you strengthen your skill set and keep that tool chest as replete as you can with things that employers would want. But there's some things you need to contend with, right? Unemployment right now hovers at around 4%, 3.75%, 4%, predicted to go to about 4% or 5%. That's still an incredibly low unemployment rate, which means there's not an abundance of individuals or talent in that marketplace. So you've got to be a shining star when you hit that stage. And I don't mean to use cliches, but literally you'll be competing as we return to normal as we were pre-pandemic. So that means sharpening that network, utilizing network. And I put in the chat, your network is going to translate to your net worth. It truly is. But beyond that, you've got to make sure that you're looking at the culture where you want to go and can thrive and be successful, because otherwise you'll join the ranks of that 4%. If it's not going to have the right culture and the right compensation, you're not going to stay there, right? And as Donna mentioned and Mike mentioned earlier, companies are beginning to regulate their, that total compensation and the offers they put out there. If you do find a good position and you're that successful candidate, it's going to be aligned and even lead the market of business comp. But I really wanted to emphasize to folks, not only the fact of the matter about the unemployment, but also that, the rules are changing a bit. And folks, as I said, quiet hiring a little bit earlier, I'm looking to the networks that I can rely on to find the talent, because I'm at such a need that I have trusted sources in these jobs that I do feel that I need to make sure that I can reach and touch tangibly where you came from, speaking to your experiences and your background. And I know I have a statistic out there. I think it's around 45%, perhaps 50% of those jobs that are most desirable are found through a network system that's external to, traditional recruiting, right? Traditional talent searching. So keep that in mind. Well, right now in the chat, you've met many people, I think, through the chat. You've introduced yourselves as you came into the chat room. Make sure you hop in on LinkedIn and find some of these connections that you can make. I hope I get a couple of invites from individuals as we sit here. I know Michael and Donna feel the same way. You should be reaching out and strengthening that network. And I think Donna mentioned, and Michael, I know will lead into this is not comfortable for everyone. Networking is not, first nature for a lot of individuals, but it is a surefire way to find an inroad into a career that you're desirous of. So please take advantage of it. That's all I have to offer.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
All you have, that's amazing. That's a lot.
Yeah, right. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, no, I a couple of things. One is, as we talked about small business and, that being where the job growth is, I think if you're networking first and foremost, obviously, but growing your network, kind of intentionally into different pockets, don't just stick with, kind of one narrow focus, look for different groups that might challenge you. But with the small business, they're not the ones that are going to be recruiting on campus. And so you need to be more creative. You need to dig deeper. You need to leverage your network, because those job opportunities are not necessarily going to hit, the university. So you need to be very proactive in how you go out and find those. I think say another skill is kind of using your network to get your application, your resume around the ATS, the applicant tracking system. You know, I'm a fan of, you know, using 2 points, 2 prongs of attack, if you will. You know, put it through the system because you got to do that. But look for anybody you know in the company, no matter what the size of the company is, and see if you can. That's actually my recommendation to my oldest, who's graduating U of M this spring. You know, you've got one, you've gone through the electronic route, but find other routes to get your application, your resume in front of people. And finally, just in terms of advice, we know there's kind of gender disparity in terms of who's willing to apply for a job. You know, men, if they hit 50% of the job requirements, they're like, yeah, man, I'm the best candidate for this. Whereas generally women are, you know, I want to hit 100% of it before I apply. And you need to be comfortable, I think, putting yourself out there and saying, yeah, I hit 70, 80%. That's fantastic. Let's, you know, go for it, I think would be my recommendation.
That's great advice.
Like,
And,
that's critical. I think,
Yeah.
and I've seen that across the board with students that I've worked with, the gender disparity. And I'm happy you brought that up.
yep, really good.
Speak to it because it's obvious to me, not just gender disparity, but racial disparity. There's not a lot of, and I use my own organization as an example. There's certain fields, certain special areas that we actively recruit for, and we're intentional about our diversity and our equity. And it's a hard find. You know, some of these areas are very hard to find. And so hopefully the folks on the other side of the ATS system are being diligent and hardworking and will be able to measure many of the folks that apply who are not traditional applicants for some of these roles that we would normally see.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's great. And David, something else that you said really kind of struck a chord with me, and regarding networking. And, you know, even if you're introverted, right, you know, you got to get out there and network. And I always say, you know, networking isn't necessarily about advocacy, right? It's about inquiry. It's about asking questions and learning from other people, which is something that I think everyone can do. So, so yeah, you know, I think you don't have to be an extrovert absolutely to network well. All right, so then the next question on our list is, with that in mind, what skills should alumni right now be looking to develop to keep themselves marketable and relevant? So this is actually a 2-part question, but let's take that first part first.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can jump in on that. But first, actually, Kavari made a really great comment just a moment ago around networking, and this is, we're all into instant gratification. So, you know, if I'm in a network, I want results today, or I'm going to give up and not do it anymore. It's a long game. You work with your network, and you've got to stay in touch, and you've got to build it and nurture it. And, you know, it's almost like, you know, farming an old growth forest sort of thing. You build this, and it takes a long time, and you never know when it's going to pay off. So focus on, building your network, but being consistent and intentional, and every year, you know, kind of pruning it and adding to it.
Just a quick interjection, Mike, try to make it reciprocal.
Yes.
When you have a networking contact and you've had a conversation with them, whether it was fruitful to you or not, you come across an article, you come across information that would be beneficial, or even if their company just scored a big deal or was in the paper, shoot them a note, send them an article, send them a congratulations, those types of things, so that they realize you're engaged in their success as well.
So, I mean, I've got, they're partially written, so I'm not going to actually show it, but we send out handwritten cards. Now, my handwriting is atrocious, so it's a little bit embarrassing, but I do it anyway. And it's just to stay in touch with people. I'll go into every meeting I can with, what can I offer whomever I'm speaking with, whether it's a candidate or just a casual meeting? Is there a connection I can make? And to that reciprocity, excuse me, that helps, because then they remember, and, you know, folks are more likely to help you the more that you're willing to help. But to get back, I think, Lisa, to your original question, I think one of the skill sets that's going to be critical going forward, and we've seen it coming out of the pandemic, is because hybrid work is here to stay. You know, I'm going to be hard pressed to say everybody's going back to 5 days in the office. Managing remotely and the skills that takes, both in terms of building trust, in terms of managing by deliverables and objectives, as opposed to, you know, people in seats. that skill set is something that's going to be have to be developed if you don't have it already.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you. Anybody else, our panelists, want to add to that question of skills that our alumni should be looking to develop to keep themselves relevant?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in. As I said, the capabilities for the roles that you're applying for, obviously, if you're a human resource professional and now I have an interest in the medical field and I want to be a doctor, there's a body of learning that goes with that. So there's some realistic transferability of my skills that I need to take inventory of. And hopefully there's alignment between what I've done in my past and what I can hopefully do in my future. So keep that in balance. That, of course, it's going to be very hard for me to become an astronaut tomorrow just because I saw that opportunity. I would not apply for it so I can keep everybody safe. But on the softer side of it, in terms of your ability to write, always keep those skills sharp. Unfortunately, it's becoming a lost art to effectively communicate both in writing and verbally. And I tell every applicant, please strengthen your writing skills, whether it's you're taking professional development to improve writing or whatever the case may be. Please do it. I just want to jump back to what Michael said about hybrid markets and the way that as we go through this rebalancing, things are changing. I don't think we'll ever be in the marketplace any longer, but I will tell you, candidates need to be flexible. So your skill of being flexible needs to be amplified because organizations are having some of that, like in the job market or the housing market, it's a seller's market or it's a buyer's market. It's starting to tip a bit because we're going back to normal pre-pandemic. And I've got this physical inventory, which is a building, and I may want folks in there so I can still utilize that asset. And so we're going to lose some of our bargaining power to say, hey, I want to work from home 4 days or 3 days. Well, we need you in office for 3 because our customers depend on XYZ, or they haven't jumped on the boat that eventually should have been demonstrated through the pandemic, because a lot of us can work in different areas that we have. So be flexible. Make sure your skills are aligned to the positions, and please strengthen your writing. That's just some free tips. Not that coming from Michigan, you would need to sharpen your skills. I'm sure Michigan well prepares their folks. So does Eastern. Get that little shameless plug for Eastern in there too, right down the street.
Excellent.
I have a couple of thoughts in regards to what both David and Mike had to say. Soft skills. The soft skills to be able to interact with a variety of different people. Everyone has their initiatives for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you need to be able to work cross-culturally with a number of different people and have respect for them. So that soft skills. I think that change management is more critical than ever with the ever-changing businesses. So that along with that flexibility that David mentioned, I think it's agility and adaptability, where you're comfortable doing things that are new or comfortable getting out of your comfort zone. In terms of hard skills, I think we're looking at things like data analytics. That's come into every industry across the board that's being utilized. If you are a technical person, now, for instance, if you're a finance FP&A person, the technology that is a part of the work that you do or the systems you use. But when does it make sense? You have to ask yourself to look at, do I need a little information on AI? Do I need, or what are the different technologies that are coming forward that I'm going to have to actually just know a little bit about? Somebody else will be the expert, but I have to understand it as it pertains to my functional area.
Yeah, excellent. So, Mark, we're at about the halfway point. I don't know if you or Kathy wanted to, bring in some questions from the audience.
Yes. Thank you, Lisa. First, we have a question from Emma. Emma states, it seems to be that financial modeling is the biggest barrier to entry the investment, real estate, corporate development industries. How do you recommend closing the gap on that skill set? Are there resources available at Ross or any financial modeling boot camps that you can recommend?
I am not aware, Lisa, are you of anything that is specific to Ross around financial modeling that is not a part of a degree? However, I would encourage people to look at the Coursera courses that Ross is engaged in and other universities and other entities are engaged in. And I think that you may be able to find a Coursera course on finance modeling. I would also look to see certain schools have certifications in that. I'm not familiar enough with our certifications to be aware if we have one, but I know that they're out there. But I think some of the Coursera courses are actually, there's no fee structure. So you could do that pro bono and come up with some of those skills and that understanding. Anybody else? Any other thoughts on that?
You stole my thunder again. I was going to tell them about Coursera, but that's primarily it. It's actually in the top 15 places to gain these skills. I saw that question ahead of time, Mark, as well. And I said, I don't know how to get financial modeling skills, but yeah, Coursera jumps out, and there's obviously some traditional learning as well that a person can jump into. But yep, and there's some LinkedIn learning as well. There's some LinkedIn learning that's out there that you can join, depending on what type of membership you have in LinkedIn, and you can get those trainings as well.
Terrific. Yeah, Mark.
Next question from an anonymous attendee. Hello, I graduated from Ross last year, and I've been networking a lot and applying to jobs, but still can't land an interview. I think I've been networking well and my resume is good. Any tips?
Link in with me and send me your data. We'll drive forward with the plan. But don't just do it with Michael as well, and also with Donna. We're here to help you out. That's what it's about. So we'll find out where, without much more information, including like your name, because you're anonymous. We won't know who you are. Let's get you the help you need, and hopefully we can bridge that gap. At least get you the interview.
The other piece that I would say is for all Ross graduates, don't forget that you have alumni access to the job board. So one of the things about the job board is that those are organizations who are interested in hiring Ross talent. And I would broaden your scope of network, not include people in your personal life, include people. Sometimes the best tips come from somebody on Instagram or Facebook, if you just let it known that you're out there in the market and what you're actually looking for. So
Yeah, I think was it
cast a wide net. I'm sorry, Mike.
No. Well, one is, and obviously, I think U of M's got you in-person support as well, right? They can reach out to you all from that standpoint.
They can work with Lisa one-on-one.
Yep.
And then the other thing is, I think to Donna, to your point, I think it was Adam Grant, research showing that you get the most help from kind of your second degree or sometimes third degree connections, the people who don't know you really well, because you kind of reintroduce yourself to them and they don't have this kind of already set impression of you. And so those are where that the biggest support can come from.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Really great
I
tip.
agree.
Yeah.
Another advice from a job seeker. I'd like to understand the best way to be headhunted.
Mike.
I can take a first stab at that if you want.
Yeah.
Be open to it. So, your LinkedIn profile should show recruiters. So we're out, scouring LinkedIn for candidates that fit whatever searches we have. It should be a reflection of your resume. It should show me what you've done. If you've got, kind of examples of successes, things like that. So that I know, wow, this person has those skill sets that I'm looking for. Also respond. So when recruiters reach out to you, even if it's to say, no, I'm not interested, thank you very much. Starting that relationship, having that positive interaction is good for the time when you do want to actually, have a connection. You can reach out kind of blindly to headhunters, but that it requires, kind of a perfect match of you having skill sets with a opening that they have at the moment. So that's challenging, and you might, quite honestly, not get a lot of response from a lot of recruiters trying that, but it's an approach.
One of the things that I've also seen is, as Mike mentioned, you're going to get a warm introduction makes all the difference in the world to a recruiter, someone that that they've actually worked with. But if you do get with that recruiter, I've had people say to them, the recruiter says, I'm sorry, I'm not working on anything currently that you would be a fit for. And if you say to them, what are you working on? I may know someone I can refer. And so you may build a relationship where you make a couple of referrals to this recruiter. And then when it's your turn or they have something that is applicable, then they'll think to call you.
I love that. And even if you're not interested in the job that they reach out to you, as Donna says, ask for a referral. I mean, I'm always asking, candidates whether they're interested or not. Do you know of somebody else that might be interested? If you're proactive about that, my gosh, that's golden.
Mhm.
Terrific. Mark, any
Another
other?
question. Can you offer any advice to job seekers with career gaps in their resumes?
Hmm.
Nothing works like a very good narrative. We just need to talk about why that gap is there. It happened for a reason, whether it was intentional or unintentional. But what did you do during that gap that still leads yourself towards that position that you're seeking, right? Hopefully there's an explanation for the gap, and usually there is. I wouldn't necessarily leave it unexplained on a resume, because it does speak to some folks when they see it there. Fill in that space about what you were doing during that time, whether you went back to go school, whether you took time to raise a family, whether you took time to get yourself together, internally. Those are all things of value. And if it's a great organization that'll have a cultural match with you, irrespective of the explanation, it should be enough, particularly because if they're focusing on the skill and the talent that they see in front of them, as you both exchange information and ideas, it should align perfectly. If not, then it might be an opportunity for you to continue your search.
Excellent.
I think that stigma has been greatly reduced over, since like 2007, 2008. Everybody during that period, now during COVID, has had periods where, through no fault of their own, they were let go, and sometimes took time finding a job. I don't look, the gaps don't concern me as much, as long as, to David's point, there's a narrative, there's a story there. Two thoughts are, if it happens to you, so let's say, today you're laid off and looking for something, think about that narrative in the future and start, looking for things that you can do to kind of, whether it's volunteering, getting involved in nonprofits, using your skills, growing your skills, taking some classes, so that when you start having those interviews down the road, you can say, yeah, this is what I've done in the time in between. And I think probably more so than having, and to David's point on the do you put it on the resume? I've got mixed feelings about that, because I always try and dig into that. So if it's there, it answers my question. But I don't know if I'm as somebody seeking a job, do I want to put that out there? And I'm
I'm
not
kind
sure.
of on the fence about that as well. I 100% agree with both David and Mike. You have to have a narrative. It has to be true. It has to be authentic and transparent. You can frame it in a way that isn't negative, regardless of this situation, and people will understand. But I think if they're not going to bring the gap up, I don't know that by explaining the gap on the resume that it's necessary. I probably would not recommend towards that. It's very easily, you can easily say, I left the organization on good terms. I had a wonderful experience, but I had a family matter that required my attention. I thought at first it was going to be about 2 to 3 months, and in fact, it was 1.5 years. And I'll never regret the time that I spent doing that. But now I find myself able to fully commit back into the market. Now, if you wanted to represent that as FMLA, but is it necessary, or do you wait? If someone just sees that you're off for 1.5 years, do they ask? Because of the things that Mike said earlier, it's not uncommon to have a gap.
Yeah, I think as I listen to you, I think the challenge for some people is if they're applying through an applicant tracking system, and then that the system is set up so that it flags and throws out anybody who has a gap more than like 6 months. That's probably the challenge for some people, but so you can kind of see an argument on both sides of that. But yeah, really good discussion. Definitely.
Next, we have a question from Emmett. Any tips for folks who have been at the same company for a long time? 16 years with one Fortune 50 tech company. I am battling perceptions that I stayed too long.
So
Who
a
wants
couple,
to take that one?
I'll wade in. And there's a couple of assumptions, right? That one, the individual is looking to leave, right? They're looking to leave, or they've reached their potential as in terms of growth in the organization. So again, you've outgrown the pond, so to speak, and now you're looking at for me personally, it doesn't really matter when I perceive now, and I've evolved in my interpretation of an individual's background and reviewing their skill set. One, it screams to consistency and longevity, and obviously there's some loyalty there in terms of what you do, or you really align with the culture and the growth of the organization, and that's what you did. So next slide is, where are you going and how am I going to translate those skills into what is needed for us in our organization? So it really, to me, and I'm amplifying on this point because it's really, really important that at that stage in your career, 16 years in, you find a good match, both compensation, culture, climate, your capabilities, all of those things must align. And if it doesn't align, hopefully that 16-year tenure is still there and you're just now looking and you're not in need of finding a new place. But be patient with your search. You seem to be a patient person anyway. You've been in a position for 16 years. Be patient in your search, and hopefully it all nets it out.
I also think that it can be impacted. I agree with everything that David had to say. And I do think if you've had a good run for 16 years, you're looking for something equivalent where it's such a strong fit. I think what many candidates fail to address on their resume are the transitions that happened with the company that they were a part of during that 16 years. Maybe you grew from one business unit to 4. And what part did you have in that growth process? Maybe you went from being national to being global, and you actually made a couple of trips over to Asia or over to Europe. Maybe you went from this type of a service line to more of this type of a service line. So I think it's important to show that you grew as the company changed, that you were a part of the growth process, you were a part of the change process, because that indicates adaptability, flexibility, agility, so that if you're coming to another company, you're going to be able to apply those skills to a new environment, whether it's the same industry, a similar function, where you can say, I had to do this over here. So I'm confident that I can do it with your company as well. And let me give you an example.
Yeah, and to Donna's point, I think there's a big difference between having kind of the same job and for 20 years and not growing, not changing, versus being with the same company for 20 years, but having 4 or 5 different jobs at, like you say, increasing levels of growth. And so you can structure your resume in a way to highlight those facts. So, yes, I was at Ford Motor Company for 20 years, but here are the different positions and here are the responsibilities under each of those positions, so that, a recruiter or somebody, looking at your resume can say, oh yeah, I see where that trajectory has. And then again, to Donna's point, I can see how it applies to my job, what I have available.
Yeah.
And if you have retained the same title for 16 years, because some companies are difficult about titles, then what are the special projects that you were appointed to? When did you step out of your box and have an impact? When did you offer to support someone outside of your realm? And did you start with no team and now you've got a team of 50? So that shows growth even over 16 years. And what did that require? Did you have to add infrastructure to your team? What did it do in terms of your ability to manage budget and financials and P&L? Did you start off without a P&L and suddenly today you have a P&L because the company has grown or that title has grown? It just hasn't changed.
Great. So Mark, do we want to take one more before
Sure.
we wrap up?
Sure. Can you speak to fields where there is high demand but limited supply of talent? What can you do to differentiate yourself?
Yeah, I think we need more information on that. So
All right, why don't we try another one?
yeah, there's high
Oh.
demand.
So it's a field where there's high demand
Uh-huh.
but a limited supply of talent.
Right.
So it's
So it's really
Yeah.
a seller's market, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
How do you differentiate yourself to stand out
As a
among this?
candidate and among which it's a good problem to have, right?
Yeah.
So anybody want to comment on that one?
I don't want to overtake things. I have some thoughts, but David, do you want to go first?
As I'm thinking about that question, when it's a very tight labor market, right? So plenty of positions, strike that, limited positions, plenty of candidates, if I understand the question.
No, I think it was the opposite.
The opposite.
The opposite?
The opposite, right? That's a good problem to have.
Oh,
as a
plenty.
candidate?
Oh, so many jobs and I'm out there, right?
Yeah. How do you distinguish yourself? That was the question, which, I mean, when I hear that, I think LinkedIn profile, right? You know, have a really robust LinkedIn profile, showcase your strengths and skills, you know, make a comment about, you know, who you are personally and how you go above and beyond in terms of, you know, what you bring to the table with soft skills, for instance. But yeah, David, over to you. Anything you would add?
You're right on the same line that I am on, Lisa. You know, and so maybe at this point in time, if you don't have those things that Lisa talked about and you find yourself in this position, you can obviously get a landscape to develop what you need to do potentially in the future. You've got to have some distinguishing things that are not just creative, but actually substantial, right? And verifiable and documentable. So you've done the demonstration, you've tried to get on these special projects and all of these other things that you need to differentiate yourself from everyone who has that same skill set that you have. It might not be your time, and you need to build that landscape that looks better than just the regular grass that's on the ground and the regular running up to the street. You have to have that differentiation, but you might not have it now. Pay attention to what's out there, continue to network, find out from recruiters, as you said, when you find yourself in need of a headhunter, what can I do to differentiate myself? Get with a professional, look at your resume, look at your LinkedIn account, and figure out how to enhance it beyond what it looks like now normally. LinkedIn has those services. Most of us on this call has that experience and can help you or begin to help you structure yourself in a way to differentiate yourself. But it is an effort. It is not something that's just going to happen. It's going to require some effort and some input from you and some stretch related responsibilities that you may not have ever known you needed until now.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the time and you know, maybe now is the time that we want to kind of move to wrapping this up. And so I want to go to our panelists and say, you know, any final words of advice that you would share with our audience today. And I'll just maybe we'll start with Mike on this one. How about that?
Sure. I'll just kind of build, I think, on what David was just saying in terms of, you know, skills and as you, especially if even if you're in, you know, university right now, practice interviews, you know, build those stories, build the narrative, you know, decide, okay, what are the questions that I'm likely going to be asked? You can, you know what, you can find those questions. What are the questions people are going to ask me, and build those stories so that when you sit in front of somebody and they ask, you know, oh, tell me, you know, what your biggest challenge has been in the last 5 years. You've got this narrative, this story about, hey, here's the challenge. Here's what I did to solve it. Here was the outcome. And being comfortable, because so many people, especially, you know, we talked about being in, you know, in the same job or in the same company for 16 years, you haven't had to interview. It's a skill set that needs to be kind of practiced. So you can find a coach, you can practice with friends and family, but that will help you stand out from a world of other folks who might not have that practice behind them.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. Yeah. Donna, how about you?
Trust yourself, be courageous, realize that the market needs you. Understand that when you talk to an employer that they're looking not only at your hard skills, but at your soft skills. And the higher up that you go in the leadership chain, the more important it will be to discuss less of what you can do technically and how you lead other people who are actually doing the technically proficient things that you did earlier in your career. Work cross-functionally, try to understand what the colleagues you're going to work hand in hand with, what's critical to them, so that you can speak about, you know, I understand this is how it relates to what you do. And realize that they're also looking for fit. They want to know, do they want to sit in an hour-long meeting, and do they want to solve a problem with you? At the, you know, in the middle of the day, do they want to say, let's finish this over lunch, or let's just keep going? Or if you have to go to the weekend, am I going to want to spend my precious weekend hours with you to get the job done? So you have to look for that as well. What do you need from the company? It should be a mutual evaluation. So everything they're looking for, you're looking for from your side as well. Don't forget that.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. And with the final word, David.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm gonna keep it very brief because I think Donna hit on everything. So I'm gonna really, really, really be intentional and dedicated to your network. get to work on it now, because you build a net before you need it. You know, no trapeze artist goes up and puts the net out after they're doing their tricks. Build that network now. And then think about the 4 C's, right? You want to think about the capabilities that you have, consistently demonstrating them. And this goes both sides, just you and the organizations, the capabilities, the consistency, the compensation, and last but not least, of course, the culture. Consider those 4 C's in yourself and in the organizations that you're seeking out. Focus on that network. I think you'll be successful.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. This has been fantastic. I know, I mean, we've had over 100 people hang with us for the whole thing, so I know the audience has really appreciated it too. It's been an honor getting to talk to all of you. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Mark to wrap us up.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, panelists, for this wonderful, very informative, and also thank you to the audience for your level of engagement. Greatly appreciate it.